The story opens with Frank Castle, a man still consumed by his past. Every day follows the same relentless routine, pushing himself through brutal workouts, drowning his pain in alcohol, swallowing pills, and struggling with constant sickness. Covering the wall behind him is a board filled with the faces of the criminals he's hunted down, a reminder that even after all this time, his war is far from over. The city has fallen into chaos. Murder, violence, and robbery have become part of everyday life, leaving innocent people to suffer while criminals rule the streets. One evening, an elderly man is out walking his dog. He sits down on a bench to feed it, enjoying a brief moment of peace. Suddenly, a group of thugs approach and violently kick him in the face before stealing his hat and snatching his dog. The man desperately begs for his dog back, but the thugs only laugh. Without a second thought, they throw the terrified animal into the path of an oncoming lorry. The man lets out a heartbreaking cry as he watches helplessly, while the thugs simply walk away, continuing to terrorize the city without fear of consequences. Locked away inside his apartment, Frank's mental state continues to spiral. Trapped alone with his thoughts, he begins hallucinating, haunted by the ghosts of the people he's lost. Over and over again, he repeats the army values to himself like a ritual, desperately trying to keep his mind together as the voices inside his head grow louder. The hallucinations become more relentless. His dead comrades appear before him, mocking and humiliating him, forcing him to relive the pain he spent years trying to bury. Finally, Frank admits the truth. He no longer wants to live with the pain and just wants to be free from it. Accepting that his war is over, he carefully packs away his guns and locks them away, determined to leave the life of the Punisher behind. A crazed man storms into a local cafe, trying to intimidate everyone into letting him skip the queue. A news report plays in the background. Frank Castle is now wanted for murder after wiping out an entire crime family. The young girl watches the report before looking up and noticing Frank as he quietly walks into the cafe. Their eyes meet for a brief moment. Without saying a word, Frank picks up his drink and walks back outside. The streets have descended into chaos. Gangs roam freely, terrorizing anyone in their way. With the crime family gone, Frank has left behind a dangerous power vacuum, allowing rival gangs to fight for control of the city. The violence has become so overwhelming that even the police have lost control, abandoning the streets and running from the criminals instead of confronting them. Frank makes his way to his family's graves and quietly stands before them. The weight of everything he's lost begins to overwhelm him as memories of happier times with his wife and children flood back into his mind. For a brief moment, he's able to relive the life he once had, a life filled with love, laughter, and the family that was taken from him. But the memories soon turn into a nightmare, dragging him back to the pain he spent years trying to escape. Unable to carry the burden any longer, Frank slowly raises a gun to his head. His finger begins to tighten around the trigger. Just as he's about to pull it, the ghostly image of his daughter appears before him. Frank freezes. Unable to take his own life, he lowers the gun, the vision of his daughter stopping him from making a decision he can never take back. On his way home, Frank is suddenly stopped by a woman named Mia. At first, Frank doesn't recognize her. Mia begins telling him about the day she lost her family, explaining that every one of them was taken from her. For a brief moment, it seems like the two share the same pain, both carrying the unbearable weight of losing the people they loved. Then her expression changes. She reveals that her family was the very crime family Frank wiped out. Overcome with anger, Mia spits in Frank's face before telling him she's placed a hit on him. She explains that at exactly 6:47, the exact time Frank killed her youngest son, every gang in the city will begin hunting him down. Her message is simple. By the end of the night, she wants Frank Castle dead. Back in his apartment, Frank is once again haunted by the ghostly image of his wife. As he stares at her, the clock strikes 6:47. Right on cue, gangs begin flooding through the apartment building, searching every floor for Frank. Looking through the spy hole, he watches in horror as his neighbor is brutally attacked. Moments later, one of the thugs sets his apartment on fire, leaving Frank with nowhere left to run. Something inside him finally snaps. Bursting through the door, Frank charges straight into the attackers, unleashing years of rage in a relentless assault. One by one, The gang members fall as he fights his way through the hallway, rescuing an innocent family caught in the middle of the chaos. Every movement is precise and effortless, proving exactly why Frank Castle is one of the most dangerous men alive. But the fight is far from over. More gang members continue pouring into the building, yet Frank refuses to back down, taking them on one after another without hesitation. The battle soon spills out onto the streets, where the city has descended into complete chaos. Criminals are everywhere, attacking anyone they can find. Frank throws himself into the violence, saving as many innocent people as he can while cutting a path through the endless wave of attackers. For the first time in a long time, Frank is exactly where he's meant to be. The Punisher has returned. Frank forces his way through the apartment block, fighting from one floor to the next as he pushes toward the rooftop. Every hallway is filled with more gang members determined to collect the bounty on his head. The fight begins to take its toll. Frank eventually runs out of ammunition, forcing him to rely on his fists, knives, and anything else he can get his hands on. Even he can't escape the damage, taking gunshots and stab wounds as the battle grows more brutal. Outnumbered and exhausted, Frank is eventually thrown over the edge of the building, crashing to the ground below and suffering devastating injuries. From a distance, Mia watches in silence, believing she's finally seen Frank Castle meet his end. As she turns to leave, Frank slowly begins pulling himself back to his feet. Then he hears it, his daughter's voice. Looking across the street, he sees the family who own the cafe being violently attacked. Without a second thought, Frank ignores Mia and rushes to save them instead. Bursting into the cafe, he fights his way through the attackers, cutting down anyone who stands in his way. Just as the family seems safe, a towering muscle-bound thug steps inside. Unlike the others, he proves to be a real challenge, matching Frank blow for blow before driving a knife straight through his chest. Even with the blade buried inside him, Frank refuses to give up. He drags the thug onto a table before repeatedly stabbing him until the fight is finally over. With the danger gone, Frank pulls the knife from his own chest and prepares to leave. The family thank him for saving their lives. Just before he walks away, the young girl runs over and stops him. She gently places a flower she made into Frank's hand. For the first time that night, Frank's hardened expression softens, as the small act of kindness reminds him there's still something worth fighting for. Frank returns to his daughter's grave, carrying the flower the young girl gave him. He gently places it beside the headstone before standing quietly, lost in thought. Breaking the silence, Frank tells his daughter that today he met a little girl who reminded him of her. For the first time in a long while, the pain feels a little lighter. The small act of kindness has given him something he thought he'd lost: hope. With a renewed sense of purpose, Frank walks away from the grave. The gang member responsible for killing the old man's dog returns to the streets, once again looking for innocent people to terrorize. The Punisher suddenly appears. With one powerful kick, he sends the thug crashing to the ground before pinning him down and pressing a knife against his throat. The elderly man soon arrives and immediately recognizes the attacker. Tells the Punisher how this was the man who stole his dog before throwing it into the path of an oncoming lorry. The Punisher reaches over, pulls the stolen hat and quietly hands it back to its rightful owner. The Punisher throws his knife. The Punisher silently asks whether this man deserves to die. The old man pauses for a moment before giving a single nod. Without hesitation,